and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, guys, I'm checking out a family film from 2013. That movie is The Smurfs 2. Now, earlier this month, I did review the first Smurfs film, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun that movie actually was. Before I started watching the Smurfs, I was totally willing to write it off as garbage, and it was actually a fun family film. I was really happy about that. I'm not so sure about the sequel, though. Partially, guys, because sequels usually lead to a sharp decline in quality. And I've been reading the summary on the back here, and this is not really filling me with a whole lot of confidence. The plot to this thing, at least what they sum up on the back, is Gargamel creates these creatures which are called the Naughties, basically evil versions of the Smurfs. And that's his plan. He's going to rehash the very same plan he used when he created Smurfette. The very same plan, I should mention, that Smurfette felt the urge to explain in great detail in the first film. He's going to rehash that. Even though it's already been proven in the past that this plan does not fucking work. And the last time that it didn't work is canon with these films. I'm not sure. I really hope that somebody at least mentions that during this film. I have no idea, though, guys, if this movie is going to be any good at all. I certainly hope so. I'm certainly hoping for this movie to be as good as the first Smurfs film. But the only way I'm going to find out, guys, is if I shut up and I push play. And I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out The Smurfs 2. I am still trying to wrap my head around the fact that the Winslows named their son Blue. I'm not even kidding, guys. The Winslows. People who were like the Smurfs' friends in the first film. You know, the son that they had during the closing credits, they named him Blue. The fuck kind of name is that? God, that just sounds fucking stupid. You know, guys, I'm going to say this right now. Out of all the people you could have cast as Vanity Smurf, John Oliver just plays that incredibly fucking well. I actually think that putting him into the, like, starting fucking lineup of Smurfs we're going to have in this movie is going to make it a little bit better. Then again, I'm also a fan of John Oliver, so I'm probably a little bit biased. You know, guys, it is really cool how they were able to sort of flip this a little bit. You know, because I'm just so used to Gargamel essentially just being the brains of the pair. Azrael has taken over as 100% brains between these two, and it actually makes the scenes with the two of them really cool, because they have dialogue with each other. Apparently Gargamel is able to speak cat, and it makes it even funnier. It's really fucking cool. You know, guys, I commented earlier about how it seemed kind of weird. It seemed kind of weird, Gargamel hashing out the very same plot that he had already used prior. I guess I can say it now, there actually has been enough of a twist on it that it actually kind of works. Gargamel cooked up a plan that actually works. Holy fuck, I'm kind of surprised. Well, guys, I really think that this here is like the best way of showing off the differences in soundtracks between the two films. In the first film, when Patrick and the Smurfs were marching off into combat, we were hit with the badass awesomeness of AC/DC. In this thing, some shitty rap song that kind of ties into the rest of the soundtrack. The soundtrack in this movie is fucking awful. Everything else at least is halfway decent, but god damn it, man, this soundtrack is shit. Did I seriously just see Smurfette zap Gargamel in the balls? Okay, that was different. I really wasn't expecting her to go for a nut shot, but you know what? It totally works. So I honestly am not going to complain. Well, guys, that was The Smurfs 2, and we end on another shitty pop song. Jesus Christ. Okay. I guess I'm going to touch on that first. Before I go into my normal stuff, since I just talked about the shitty little pop song that's playing over the closing credits, I guys have not seen this kind of a violent shift in soundtrack in a long time. Guys, I remember the first film. We had stuff from Aerosmith, we had stuff from AC/DC. It was really cool. The soundtrack was great. Here it's all pop horse shit, and it's not even good pop music. Guys, I understand I'm not the biggest fan of pop music, but this stuff here is scraping the bottom of the already horrendous pop barrel. That's awful. Oh, God. You know, I would probably say that the soundtrack almost ruins this, but it really doesn't. Now, before I talk further about all of the details of the movie, I asked at the start of this, will this or was this better than the first film? And the answer is a very loud, resounding no. I am going to stress that The Smurfs 2 is still a fantastic family film, and it's great if you have kids. But it's not as good as the first film. It is still a fun movie to watch. It's still incredibly strong. But if I had to pick between the two films, I'd stick with the first one. And one of the big reasons why this one is not as good as the second one is the moral. I just want to make this point real clear, guys. I have no problem with family films trying to tell some kind of a moral. That is totally cool. I absolutely expect that. And the moral that is used in this film is great. It is a very strong moral about what makes a family. Essentially, guys, the moral is family is more than just blood, and it's fantastic. It is a great moral for kids, and the problem with it is they keep beating you over the head with it. Guys, I totally understand again that you want to make sure that this message is picked up by any children watching this. But do we really need them to continue to talk about the power of family and what makes a true family every couple of minutes? Is it really that necessary for us to be bludgeoned senseless by this moral? The problem with it, guys, is that once more, even though it's a really strong moral, the fact that they continue to bludgeon the viewer over the head with it, it actually is taking away from the story proper, which is a really interesting story. And it would have been really great if we could have seen it fleshed out more, but no. Instead, we need more of this, family is awesome. You have to know who your real family is, and love is this, and yada yada yada. They keep beating you with it, and they have to sacrifice story for it, which is the one thing I cannot stand, is that they had to sacrifice story for it. Now, I will say that even though I just said that the story is interesting, most of that is because the story is, for the most part, a rehash of the first film. The only things that are really different are the fact that the setting has been changed from New York to Paris. Gargamel is now world famous because he still has some Smurf essence in his fucking wand. He's able to do stage magic. And that actually is why the whole thing is set in Paris, is because Gargamel is on tour. And he's performing in Paris, and he does have some kind of an evil scheme that literally has to be done in Paris. There's a whole plan about that. The only other real change is that Gargamel now has his two Smurf clones. He has his two naughties. It would have been great if the film could have told us when exactly he made them, or why he decided to make them in the first place. You would think that they would tie into his, sinister plan. The problem is that even though the first time we hear his plan is to kidnap Smurfette, get her to give him basically get her to give Gargamel the friggin' formula that Papa Smurf used to turn her into a Smurf, so then Gargamel can use that on his naughties, then make an entire army of naughties, turn all of them into Smurfs, and then throw them into his colossal, like, Smurfulator machine and get all of the Smurf essence he's ever going to need. Thus, he's able to take over the world. That whole plan goes completely south in the final act when Gargamel, when he completely forgets the whole idea of making a whole army of naughties and just turning them all into Smurfs. No, it's just, I'm going to open a portal to the Smurf village. I'm going to take all of your Smurfs, and I'm just going to suck the essence out of every single one of them, and I'm going to take over the world. His plan completely changed. Now, I totally understand that that's very similar to the Smurfs comics and the Smurfs show from the 80s, because in that show, Gargamel's motives for why he wanted the Smurfs would change from either he wanted to make them into gold or he wanted to eat them, and it would change from episode to episode. Sometimes it was actually both. So I guess him just randomly changing up his plot, even though it seems kind of lazy, could almost be seen as a reference to how the character was handled in the Smurfs cartoon and in the Smurfs comics. That's totally fine. Okay, I honestly am going to let that little bit of laziness slide, because it does kind of work as a reference, and that's totally cool. A rather clever reference when you really start to think about it. However, though, guys, now beyond those changes, it's the exact same plot. The plot is that Papa Smurf and a very small select group of Smurfs have to travel from their world to ours. They team up with Patrick and Grace from the first film, Patrick and Grace Winslow, and they have to stop Gargamel. Again, the only real difference is that instead of doing it in New York, they're doing it in Paris. They even copied shots, guys, because I still have very vivid memories of the scene when Patrick and the Smurfs are marching through Central Park, and they're being back in black by fucking AC/DC. It was a fantastic shot. It was a really cool scene. Here, it's the very same thing, only now there's some god-awful rap pop thing playing in the background, which again, that ties more into the soundtrack than it does anything else, but still, they were totally copying shots. There were actually a handful of plot points too that were just literally like carried over from the first film and carbon copied. So writing here, even though, guys, it's decent and it's interesting, a lot of that is because it's just rehashing the first film. And I totally understand, guys, that is a normal thing with a whole lot of sequels. A lot of sequels are going to constantly rehash the same shit from the previous film. However, this thing does it so often that it's, or correction, now they do it so often and it's so painfully noticeable that it does kind of take away from the new stuff that was put into this film, which is mainly the fucking naughties and fucking Gargamel's plan to take over the world by collecting even more Smurf essence and having an almost foolproof plan to do it. The only other real change that happened from the first film to this one has to do with Gargamel's cat, Azrael. Because in the first film, Azrael was basically just Gargamel's sidekick, which works because that was how the two worked in previous Smurfs properties. In this one, though, Azrael actually comes out as almost the smarter of the two, and is actually coming up with plans before fucking Gargamel does. And to actually kind of make things a little bit funnier, and also to kind of make things funnier, Gargamel is touring globally, and yet he's only known for all of his stage stuff. Azrael's got a Facebook page, and you actually see him, logging into it at one point. And essentially, guys, Gargamel is still, for the most part, living in the past. Azrael has gone completely digital and actually has to teach Gargamel at one point how to use a fucking tablet, which is kind of funny. everything, guys, with those two characters, Gargamel, Azrael, those two work so well. I loved every single scene where it's those two sharing a scene together. It was great. Part of that has to do with the acting. Why don't we touch on the acting? The acting here is the same kind of solid acting we saw in the first film, and special mention again has to go to Hank fucking Azaria as Gargamel. He is the reason to watch. He really is, guys. I'm going to tell you right now, every other cast member turns in a fantastic showing, but all of them pale in comparison to the powerhouse performance of Hank Azaria as Gargamel. It just works so well. Works fantastically. And as for the rest of our cast, again, almost all of them are coming back from the first film. John Oliver finally has a chance to really shine as shine as Vanity, when in the first film I think he had all of 2 lines. They've added even more, Smurfs, if for no other reason then, so that way we can get really kind of shit cameos from people like, let's see, Jimmy Kimmel and Shaq and a bunch of others who all show up as brand new Smurfs. Jimmy Kimmel's Smurf at least was referenced in the first film, and his 30 seconds here, well, it's just Jimmy Kimmel is Jimmy Kimmel, so he plays a smug fucking douche. So what? It really did feel almost like a waste of 30 seconds, and it was there just simply so that way they can say, hey, we also have Jimmy fucking Kimmel here. Yay. The acting, though, guys, is still totally solid, and that's partially, again, because they have a script that is still rather decent. But I also once more have to state that's also because a whole lot of the script is essentially Xeroxed from the first film's script, and the first film's script wasn't too bad. CG. Why don't we touch on CG? I commented when I covered the first film that it looked kind of weird that our Smurfs were just covered in all these freckles and blemishes, and in close-ups it looked really weird. Papa Smurf still has a whole lot of those, but then again, that's also because he has all the extra wrinkles to make him look aged. But with every other Smurf, they actually went and they toned fucking back a whole lot of the freckles and the blemishes, and it doesn't look as distracting. So that much there's totally awesome. All right, I am going to give them props on that. Our CG for almost everything in this film is really solid. Again, though, most of it is not as good as what was in the first movie. I will say, though, that I do have to give high marks in terms of CG to, and again, it has to go to Azrael. In this film, guys, Azrael is almost completely rendered in CG, and because of that, the character is far more animated than he was in the first film, which is great. And seeing as how Azrael has even more screen time here, that totally works. Unfortunately, some of the worst CG comes from Azrael, because Gargamel at one point is doing a fucking show, and Azrael runs up on stage, and the audience is heckling him because he has this little fucking tiny cat, and most acts of this nature have got a big cat, so Gargamel takes him and magically turns him into a 20-foot tall house cat. Well, maybe not 20-foot tall, 10-foot tall house cat, just a big fucking house cat. The problem is, he looks awful at 10 feet, he really does. That is probably the worst CG you'll see in the entire goddamn film. And even then, though, it kind of works. Okay, it really does. I mean, well, kind of works as long as you're willing to just laugh at how goofy, at how goofy it looks. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, as a family film, kids are not going to care about that. Kids actually are just going to laugh at the fact that Gargamel made his fucking cat 10 feet tall. That's awesome. I've already touched on music. Well, I guess I can touch a little bit more on special effects. Animation, specifically, because I have already talked about exactly how all the Smurfs are modeled. But what about how all of them move? There's and in this case, guys, animation is fantastic because it's, again, pretty much the very same stuff we saw in the first film. Everything here in terms of the Smurfs moving is ridiculously fluid. It looks fantastic. A whole and also a whole lot of like the and a whole lot of the like magic effects look really cool. It's really top-notch, solid stuff. But that also is kind of a given, considering the fact that this was a big-budget film from Sony. Alright, so, camera work is okay, our lighting is okay, I've already touched on our horrendous soundtrack. Our score, though, is okay. Our score is nothing ultimately special, but it is still at least a halfway decent score. It's certainly better than the shitbag soundtrack we get saddled with for quite a few scenes in this movie, so I do have to at least grant them that. Our sound mix here is really solid. Guys, when all is said and done, am I able to recommend the Smurfs 2? Kind of, yes. I can totally recommend it, especially if you have kids, and especially if you have kids who really liked the first film. They are going to absolutely adore this thing because it is more of the same. And normally, guys, I see that as a bad thing, but I don't consider it a bad thing when we're talking about family films because you do have to cater to children, and children are always going to want more of the exact same. And there honestly, guys, and there honestly is enough here where not only, guys, are kids going to have fun with it, but parents, aunts, uncles, whatever, are also going to have a whole lot of fun here because there are a lot of jokes. There are a ton of jokes which are going to go clear over the heads of the kids, and they're going to make you smile. I can almost guarantee, because some of them, honestly, guys, are jokes that are just so fucking corny that they honestly just sort of make you, smile because they are that dumb. And then other ones are actually really tightly written, and it works so well. Guys, yes, I can absolutely recommend this, at least if you can find it incredibly cheap. There is no way I would recommend this thing at full fucking price. However, though, nowadays I believe you can find a copy of this thing for roughly about $10, if not fucking less. If you can find it for less, snag it. And at least if you've already got the first film. If you can find the first film, by all means, buy the first one before buying this one. However, though, if you do have the first one and you've got like an extra like $6, $7, you find this sucker for about $6, $7. Snag it. It's totally worth owning if you liked the first movie, or if you, like me, have been a fan of the Smurfs ever since you were a kid. Believe it or not, guys, actually, it literally has been at least 15 years since I watched anything Smurf-based before I watched both this and before I watched this and its prequel this month, and I actually have grown to really enjoy the Smurfs once more. I'm probably going to have to watch even more old episodes of the Smurfs after I'm done recording this, because I kind of sort of did that after I watched the first one, and a whole lot of awesome, fond memories were just flooding back. Now, a little bit of bad news is that will we ever see a Smurfs 3 in this specific series? No. And there's two reasons for that. The first one is the second one here did not do nearly as well in the box office as Sony had hoped, so they kind of had to scrap the series there. But the other reason is because Jonathan Winters, the man who voiced Papa Smurf, passed away after working on this film. So you basically would either have to recast Papa Smurf in Smurfs 3, or you'd have to completely write Papa Smurf out, and those options are not there. So it kind of sucks, because I would have loved to have seen a third entry in this series, especially since we now have two brand new Smurfs in our newly fucking Smurfatized naughties. I would have loved to have seen them worked into a full-blown film with this very same cast and everything else. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen. And even though that sucks, we still got at least two really interesting and really fun family films out of it, and god damn it, that is absolutely amazing. So yeah, guys, I can totally recommend this thing, but I would at least recommend the first Smurfs films a fuck of a lot more. That one is certainly the stronger of the two entries. However, though, if you can find them both incredibly cheap, by all means, pick them up and fucking marathon them. It is totally worth it. Now, I just said I was going to go and marathon some more fucking Smurfs episodes because I am in a little bit of a Smurfy mood right now. God, that sounded really, really stupid. Anyway, fuck it. I'm going to go watch some goddamn Smurfs. With that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.